And just as you say, I think that it's really good when men attend women in tech events or women some because then they become the minority, and usually they're not in the workplace and not in other areas. They're so used to like being able to be whoever they are, the way they are, and not have to think about things. But I do believe that a lot of men that come into spaces where there are more women get a different feel for what it's like to be the odd one in the room.
The following is a conversation with Annsi Krol. She is the CEO of Ventla. Their mission is to help companies streamline their operations and accelerate various projects, ranging from meetings and events to conference trips, company visits, and more. With a background of over 25 years in marketing and communications, Annsi is deeply committed to connecting people. Hey Annsi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, finally, thanks for taking the time and joining on the podcast. How long were you there? Did you leave within a week or?
So I came in on the 6th and I left on the 12th. So pretty much a week. And then I had to continue to Chicago and then to New York. So it was a long trip, but happy to start it with South by.
We met at Slush, which was another conference. What do you guys do?
So Ventla is a platform. We stem from events. So it's event platform with everything from event page to through registration to interaction on an event app. And then a data portal. You can do streaming on it. It's pretty much got all the different features that you're looking for. But more importantly, I think that Ventla is a company that is really trying to make sure that people get included and that they feel connected when they go to events. So we put quite a lot of effort into the methodology and the things around event planning and meeting, not just the tech. So it's hard to be a tech CEO and then say, human first, please. But that's pretty much what we're doing.
Yeah, so you're not AI first, human first.
Yeah, we're using AI, but but that is just like sort of part of the tech that we need. And I think that's important to sort of always start with the reason why. Why are we gathering people? Why are we going on a conference trip with colleagues? What are we trying to achieve? Because for us as a tech company, once we know that, we can truly understand and then say, well, this is what we can do with the tech to emphasize what you're trying to achieve. I think that's always how you have to think about tech. Is it helping?
And so, in terms of examples, are items that you've helped your community achieve that can give the audience a little bit more sense into what that means?
Well, usually we are being used as a platform by large corporations that do a lot of meetings and events, and also small associations that only do a few a year. We are being used as an extension of intranets. For instance, we have one example, a case where we have 7,000 nurses that use Ventla as a platform to get information and input and inspiration about how to handle stress. So the tech can be used in many formats. The most commonly cases that people use this for is for events and meetings, and then travel, when you do group travel. And it's very easy to see that as very sort of checklist based. Like you're just trying to check a checklist, everything that you need to have done to create an event or a meeting or a trip. But what we try to do is work more on how can you help anyone that you're bringing into your activation or experience and make sure that they are primed with the right information, maybe things they need to read up on, and then make sure that when they are in a on-site experience, if they're meeting in person, that they are fully immersed in that, and the tech is just nudging, giving information, maybe sending out a poll or just trying to get it more engaging, help out I kind of say that we help serendipity by creating meetings between people that may have, say, similar interests, or just, try to meet somebody with that you didn't know before. So there are multiple ways you can use the tech to do all these different things.
A composable solution for especially enterprise, you can compose it to whatever they need.
Yeah, we're B2B only today. I know that we get proposals all the, can you do weddings? Can you do this? Can you do that? Well, of course, but we're a B2B solution today. Something different to be in the consumer market.
You were not at the beginning of Ventla and you were brought in as a CEO. How was that experience? How did the founders take it and how was that experience?
Well, the founders were the ones. That's a good start. It's not my first journey to come into somebody else's company and work with growth and sort of building the next generation of a company. It's always interesting when you do so. Like Ventla has been around since 2011. It's still very much startup-like because we're still in our growth and we're still hitting new markets and a lot feels new. We've also done quite a lot of changes since I came on board about 18 months ago. So it's interesting when you come in, and the way I kind of tackle it is I try to get as much information about history as I can through the founders, through the employees, and especially through the clients and their experience with us. A lot of our clients have been with us for a long time. So we have quite a lot of history to look at. But then I always try to focus on looking forward. So more focus on what we want to achieve, get a clear vision and goal statement set, and then get everybody on board to that. And that alignment, when you come in as an external CEO and the first external CEO, it's a new way of working. So it takes a while to get everybody sort of used to the fact that somebody external is all of a sudden driving that process. But it's been fun. I think we've made so much progress. There's a lot happening with the product. We see a lot of positive indications in the market. It's been a rough year and a half just because of the fact that we, like everyone else, have been in a climate where the financing and sort of global political market has been a bit wobbly. People have been a bit careful with budgets and everything, but we still have our clients with us and we're still seeing a lot more growth, and event seems to be picking up. And when I came in, we were just getting out of COVID, so that's fun. We're set for that and we love doing it with our clients.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few founders who are in this event space, and COVID was such a shift for businesses that were dependent on in-person kind of activities. Better or worse, I think now the companies are resilient and prepared if that were to happen. How did you win back the trust that you can service them remotely and there is even a need to spend on something like this?
Relationships that we have, especially with our really large clients. We do 50 to 75 events a week. So they're quite active. They saw that the technology was robust. I think our tech has always been known to be robust and very dependable. And also they saw that the team was really trying to help out because everybody was going through such a big change, just trying to adjust to everything happening in the world. In Sweden, it was a bit different maybe because we were not as shut down as the rest of the world, even though all events were. I mean, you were not allowed to go to events. So that was similar to everybody else. But when it comes to schools still being open and having more of an open society, even though there were restrictions, made it a bit different, I think, than for many others that were totally in lockdown. But I think that, as you say, I see it as a moment where people really got a moment to prove that we could pivot with technology. I think it's also interesting to look at what's happening now when we're trying to find like the mix of the best way of using tech. So it's a bit, it's interesting. And I see a lot of in-person events. I don't think that virtual is in any way slowing down. It's just becoming like that extra layer that you put on an in-person event, that you also offer virtual tickets, or you always have that as a backup. And I think we see a lot more recordings being made with in-person.
You've been dabbling in the event space for such a long time, and there's so much experience to draw from. When you did come in here at Ventla, set product, set team, you come in, I'm sure you had new ideas on how things should move. How did the team take it, and how did you approach that?
I think that the biggest difference for me was that I come from communications and not sort of the development side of things. So my approach was very much looking at what is it like to produce an event? And what do you go through as a team, and sort of how do you do that? And how can we then cater with our communications, our processes, how we build our tool and platform to support that? And I think that was really something that the team was excited about, because they got a clear view of and a better understanding of what it's like to be an event producer. And I didn't think much about the code. We have really good people that can tell me what is doable and what isn't, and how long is it going to take to develop. And, I was more looking at it out of the commercial end of things, and also looking a lot at how much do we need to communicate about the technology that we've got. I think that is quite common in startups and tech-driven companies, that they forget to inform their clients about what they're doing, and really making sure that the knowledge base is up to date, that they're doing customer calls that are just informing and trying to get people excited about new deployments of the product that is coming out. Because it's so easy to be so focused on just getting the code right and testing it and making sure that it's solid before you deploy it, that you forget the communication aspect of it.
Shayna had a good comment on ROI on events. I'm curious, how do you guys define that?
To me, and I am an insights nerd because that's my background. Previously, in a different life, I was running an insights agency. So I'm definitely getting Ventla very much into nerding down into the data. I think that when it comes to ROI, you have to start with the reason why. Why are you doing your gathering? What are you hoping to achieve? So purpose and sort of understanding that. And then depending on those answers that you get when you ask those questions, then you can start looking at, like, how do I measure that? How do I get the right data to understand that? Some of it will come through the app as we do different activations, but some will also be totally disconnected from the app, and you need to look at other type of data that you have. And then from that, you will eventually be able to measure your ROI. But if you don't know why you're doing things, it's super hard to start measuring.
Start with the why. Simon Sinek.
Yeah, it's the best.
And I'm sure you get this a lot. I don't know if I mentioned this to you in our conversations, but I long ago did an event tech app. It was called Converge. Bootstrapped it. I was trying to help conferences manage their agenda and kind of allow people at the conference to network. And that came from a personal pain. IIT Bombay used it for one of their conferences. It was a UX conference, which was a tough launch.
Rough.
People from all over India, but also all over the globe. It was an international conference. It's a universal pain. People go to conferences, very hard to kind of find and meet people, especially depending on the size of the conference. It could be huge. And that's just one use case within event tech. There are many event tech apps. How do you differentiate from some of these apps? And do you feel that the space is crowded?
Well, the space is crowded because there's been so many tech companies coming into this space during COVID because they saw the opportunity to do something. I think that we also see that There is a lot of consolidation in the market, pivoting to something different. So there's a lot going on in this space, and I think it will be for quite some time. When it comes to how we are different, I think that some of these, once again, we're not for everything. So we're not trying to be this like super huge conferences. We're much, shouldn't say small, because I mean, you can still do like 7,000 people. But I think that the important thing is to really look at like, what am I trying to do? How can I use an app? Because I think, I could speak for hours just on how this tech can get so misunderstood and misused, or even not sort of discussing with the clients what will happen. So what will happen if you try to do an event with 10,000 people or 100,000 people? It doesn't matter the size, because I mean, there are events that cater for so much. What will happen with the participant list if you show that in full? What does that put you in when it comes to like, how do you need to filter it? How do you need to guide people through the participant list and things like that? And I think that once you start looking at, once again, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want people to feel and do? Do you only want to have digital program and do some interactivity? Well, then you have multiple platforms that can do that. But if you want to do a niche thing, you might end up in a platform that has that feature alone. So therefore, I'd much rather discuss with each client what they're trying to achieve to see if we're the right fit. If we're not the right fit, we'd rather walk away, because we don't want people to be disappointed.
And so a lot of your growth right now is primarily like outbound B2B sales, or do you also have like a self-serve version where people can just come in and kind of get onboarded by themselves?
Well, our onboarding actually does included in the price personal onboarding with our team, because we want to help our clients and fully understand, what they're doing. That said, of course, the onboarding is also, you can go through the recordings and sort of help yourself to start with a platform without our help. But we always provide onboarding meetings as well to sort of look at your case, whatever you're trying to do as your first event. Most of the clients we have come to us for multiple events, work very actively outbound, but we also get quite a few in through our clients. So that's our biggest channel, is referrals, with clients that are suggesting us to their network. We do not have one of those like just sign up and go. You do sign with us and you meet us, because that is also important for us, and to make sure that they understand that support is included. That is not included in all these platforms that we have as colleagues in the business. I think it's really hard to be in the events industry and not do personalized, in the sense of, because I mean, it's a do-it-yourself tool that we've got. So everybody gets to jump in and do their event. We're not doing it for them. We're just giving them advice and sort of showing them some best practices. They can search for it in the knowledge base if they don't want to interact with us. But we feel that if you're in the event, hospitality, and travel, meet and travel business, it's all about people. So because the teams that are working with us are trying to attract people as well. And if you don't understand that, and you think that this is just like any other tech industry that might be very automated, I think that is one of the reasons why some of these companies are struggling, because they don't understand the event business. They don't understand the immense emotional strain that these teams are under when an event goes live. I know that when you go to events and you can just, feel it. You have like 3,000 people, or even smaller, 200 managers that are expecting stuff and want to like get really a lot out of a conference they go to. if you don't understand the amount of stress the people that are putting on that go through, and how important it is that everything works, that we've really helped them cater to minimize admin, minimize time waste that they might be going through if they were doing it manually, then we don't understand what they do. So I think it's super important that you do that. It doesn't mean that you can't scale, because we can take on a lot more business at this company right now without having to increase our team or even our service, because the way that we've built the platform for scalability. So we're in a very good position for growth. But I think that the most important factor is probably the understanding of events, of humans, what it's like being in this kind of live moment that you have with anything. If it's in person, if it's virtual, doesn't matter.
We bumped into each other at South by Southwest at a queue. You were in a queue for a Women in Tech meetup, I believe. And
yeah,
I joined in the
how
queue.
did that feel?
So that was fun. That was actually my first Women in Tech event, which was very interesting. I don't think a lot of males attend because it's obviously for women in tech. But at the same time, I think more males should attend. That's what it feels like, at least from attending that event. And yeah, it was an interesting event. We started chatting in the queue, and I was like, you know what? The queue is moving, we are moving in. Might as well join her and see how it's like. And so, yeah, it was an interesting event. It ended up being an event where the moderator was missing. And I think Ariana, if I remember her name correctly, did do a great job at stepping up as a moderator. And that was also an interesting experience. Somebody just jumping in and saying, you know what, let's have someone man the event. From our conversations, I remember you're very involved in the women in tech community in Sweden. How can things be a lot more better than they are today for women in tech?
Oh, that is the big question, isn't it? I've been part of Women in Tech. I started my career, like I said, at Ericsson. So I've been part of the tech community since I walked into working life, which is quite a while ago. We're not talking age, right? I've often been like a minority. And just as you say, I think that it's really good when men attend women in tech events or women, because then they become the minority. And usually they're not in the workplace and not in other areas. They're so used to like being able to be whoever they are, the way they are, and not have to think about things. But I do believe that a lot of men that come into spaces where there are more women get a different feel for what it's like to be the odd one in the room. And for a lot of women, especially in the tech industry, that is our everyday life, to be the odd one. And that shouldn't be. And so I work pro bono for Women in Tech Sweden as a business developer, trying to help the association to grow. And also, Ventla has actually been part of the Women in Tech conference since 2020. So before I came to Ventla. So we are also part of the big conference that Women in Tech Sweden do every year. So that next one is 17th of April. So it's pretty close. We're counting down. But more importantly, we want to be an association for people in tech. We're just not there yet. So for a while longer, we are called Women in Tech. But we do include, if you want to be involved, it doesn't matter what gender or non-binary, whatever you see yourself as, you're welcome to join in and be part of the change. How to create that change, I think it has to be very intentional, not only among women, but especially among men that can open the doors, that can fund female founders. We get 2% of the capital if we open a startup today. Something is so wrong in the world. So I think it's a matter of getting more perspectives invest more in minorities, not only women that want to start businesses that are more diverse and more inclusive, but also get all the already existing companies to really have a think. what they can do to make sure that they are truly diverse and inclusive.
Where do you start those?
So working very actively with the whole DEI perspectives. But I also feel that there is so much in society today that we think, it's so already labeled. So we think that we're doing the right thing, and then we'll go, no, but, really couldn't find anyone that was, the female candidate. Then they're not looking hard enough, or they're not using the right methodology to find women. And this is such a big question, but I think that being aware that you need to work on it actively, being aware that you have all these, we carry so much with us from when we're kids on what is, and it's not only against women, it's against people of color, it's against so many, even other things. We have labels for everything. And if we don't acknowledge that is wrong and that is leading to problems, find our own reasoning why we're doing the right thing, even if we're doing the wrong thing. So I think that, to me, it's just important that we have diverse teams. So I'm not saying that you need to hire a woman every time, or you have to give your capital to women every time. But I do believe that it's something super wrong with the system when there is so little capital going to female founders or people of color, when there is, clearly so much good out there that these entrepreneurs are trying to do and really should get capital, that we need to start looking at what's the process like for who is investing at what time, and what kind of process are they using when they decide on where to put their money or not. And I thought that was really interesting when I went to that Women in Tech meetup, because I met so many amazing entrepreneurs. We ended up very much looking at what could they do. I was there mainly as a Women in Tech, part of the Women in Tech Sweden delegation, to see what a meetup in South by Southwest is like. And I found that really funny, that it was so not a set format, and that the host didn't even show. But as with many female events, it tends to get really, really good anyways, because somebody always steps up and you jointly, as a community, make it a really important hour that it was, because everybody came there, and we need to make sure that everybody came to that meetup understands that it made a difference that they showed up. And hopefully, I so hope that some of the VC people that were there did find companies to invest in, because there's some brilliant ideas in the room. It's not fair. It is not just in any way, shape, or form. But if we don't work actively, it won't change.
It could be also because of the network. If you look at people who you hire or you fund, it is from your network, primarily either first degree or second degree. If people started networking more diversely, I think things could be moving much faster. Because if I don't know anyone from that background, then it's very hard to pick a random person and say, okay, I'm gonna start now. I think that's an earlier fix for me. Like, people should meet a lot more diverse people rather than just meet similar kind of people with similar backgrounds.
Fully agree. And I think it's not only like the sort of the women in tech spectra here, because it's like diversity in general. And I think that is also something that we have to think about in the event space as organizers as well, to get yourself out of your filter bubble, to network with intent. And to do that, it also means that anyone putting together an event need to make sure that, how do I make sure that people that wouldn't come in front of each other actually do? So we need a lot more activations and events and things going that creates diversity, that gives the network that is broader. But that's also why I think it's so important, the whole thing that we started with, like the ask. and paying it forward and making sure that, who can I connect to? So I was going through that room, and I was actually at several meetups at South by, and I even wrote an article on it that came out over the weekend, that I would go around the room and, like, instead of just, this is me, this is, like, how can I help you? Because if you start with that question, what are you looking for? How can I help you? It becomes much easier, because otherwise it's, oh yeah, here I am trying to sell something. And I'm like, it's such a weird dynamic. But if everybody comes into all these, different types of events, and you have a moment, a set part where you say, this is where we actually go and help each other. And Shayna is the best on that with her wing people concept. How can I help you? Who can I put you in front of? Because it might not be me, but people are looking at it so transactional, that it's always this, like, can you give me what I'm looking for? Otherwise I won't talk to you, instead of saying, how can I help you? And then the other way around, and then take it from there. And I'm sure that we would get much more done, and we would connect with the right people in an easier way. But then you have to start thinking about others rather than yourself and your own.
Key takeaways from, like, you attended a lot of events, including the meetups at South by Southwest and Slush, and what's been the key highlight or key takeaways from, let's say, the last 2 or 3 big events you've gone to? Two that I know of. I'm sure you've been to a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a hectic 7 months. I've gone to quite a few, both big and small. So I try to do anything from roundtables all the way up to, like, the really big conferences. And I know, for me to speak on, like, key takeaways, because it becomes very much in my own head and my own filter bubble, because I do tend to go to things that I want to listen to. So then it's, oh look, yeah, I was right. it becomes sort of like this prophecy that you created on your own. So it becomes weird. But I am convinced that there is such a great need for human connection, and people need to meet each other. And that becomes very apparent. Doesn't matter if I listen to somebody on stage, they will talk about the importance of authentic relationships. And, in the time of AI, when everybody's wondering, am I speaking to a human or a computer? The real connection, the real meeting becomes more and more important. So I think that is a nice balance, since a lot that I've been listening to is about AI, like for everybody else. But I see that kind of sidetrack that always comes up on every stage, and also in the conversations, because I think we've always said, like, you go to events to meet the people, right? But I am definitely on an exploration and sort of trying to understand how people really mean that, because it's like all about the people, but they just hang out with the people they know, and not as much with, like, where can I go to meet people in a certain topic, or even have the event creators create spaces where you meet and you collaborate. So, it doesn't matter if it's a hackathon or if it's just a mingle, whatever it is. But I think that it's interesting that you have to work really hard to sort of get to know new connections at events. And I find that most people actually find networking and getting into, like, new crowds is quite hard and takes a lot of energy. So I believe that we need to do that much more planned and help people when they come to events to take the edge of networking and make the authentic relationships and connections much more central and that's why I truly love what Shayna is doing with wing people, because it's always easier speaking about somebody else than yourself. So whenever she's not there, she's definitely missed, but I try to just take all the learnings that I have from all the stuff that we've done together and make the most of it. If you are naturally curious, and it's not about what you're going to get out of any meeting that you do, like any person you bump into, but truly can just be in the moment and listen to what this person has to say and just go with the flow, The worst thing that can happen is that you sort of gave away time that is not going to give you something back, but that's life. That's what it's all about. That person that moment will influence you anyways. So make it count, make it be something, even if it's just, spending a few minutes over a coffee, chit chatting.
Who do you go for advice to?
Ooh, on the question, I have a very close connection with our chairman. He's brilliant. He's done quite a few startup journeys. And then I have a network of people that I go to depending on what I'm thinking about. And to be honest, I do bounce a lot of work with my husband because he's good and he knows me as well, so he can say we've been together for a long time. So and he's seen me as the CEO for other companies as well. So I have him as the sounding board as well.
The weirdest interview story. So while you were hiring people, you don't have to name
While
names.
I was hiring people,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I haven't had that many here. I've done a lot of hiring through the years. I think that the weirdest ones are always when you kind of realize that people are just coming, they're not really interested, they haven't read up on the company, they have to go to a certain set of interviews. That gets me super annoyed because then they've managed to trickle the way through all the way to an interview and then they're just like totally off, you know. But I probably have some, but nothing that comes to mind right now.
I had one where I had a guy answer something on the whiteboard, and when he was facing the whiteboard, on his back pocket, there was a comb sticking out. And I have not had my hair since like a decade, more than a decade, I think. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't need that in an interview for sure.
I find it even more interesting to speak to. I've had situations, and a lot like what we were talking about, like having the right team with you when you do a journey. I remember way back working for a totally different company as a CEO. I had somebody that was already hired, but was still on their probation period. And I didn't feel that it was working the way I wanted. And I very bluntly, after a while, asked, if you could pick and choose, like, what would you do if you could, and it was not even in the right industry. And I was like, yeah, I kind of sense that. so, so sometimes you have to do like weird situations, even when you're like looking at people that's already with the company. But yeah, I was very young at the time as well, but it was just so apparent to me that the person wasn't happy. And I think that is important to look at as well. Like, do people glow when they start talking about whatever position they're either interviewing for or that they're in? If they don't seem excited, something's off.
That's the thing about probation as well. It seems like, so did you end up like firing him or her, or how did that work?
It was a him, and he chose to leave because because if it's like, if you start talking to people, they're not happy and they're not, because then he was like, oh, but I want to be within recruitment. And I was not in recruitment. And I was like, well, why don't you pursue that? So then it was, and of course, I knew some people within recruitment. So, he's like, yeah, I shouldn't be here. And then so he resigned. And then I fixed him up with an interview within a recruitment firm. And he actually is in recruitment. He's been his whole career. So he's had half a life in recruitment now. But it's a matter of, because I think it's important as a manager, you're also helping people to build their careers. And it's my job to make sure that whatever time they spend with me, they should be more attracting in the labor market than they were when they first came in. So it's my responsibility as a manager to also make sure that they thrive, that they do what they want, what they're passionate about, and that their experience grows so that they will find their next career step, either with the company or without.
Thank you so much for the time. It was a pleasure talking to you as always, and I hope our paths cross again very soon in some event.
Likewise.
If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. See you in the next episode.